Hi, it's Becky from Cronin's Clips, and I was going to talk about some of the do's and don'ts of Kalahari. No particular order, I'm just kind of listing some of the things that maybe we did right and maybe we didn't, or we didn't know ahead of time. So, the first thing is don't expect to get into the restaurant right away. Depending on what restaurant, what time of day, what time of year, specifically the Mexican restaurant we did not have a reservation for. We looked around, the resort was not very busy, so we said, "Oh, I don't think we're going to need a reservation." But when we walked up there, they asked if we had one, and we didn't, and so they told us about 20 30 minutes. They said they would text us. We walked around the resort, and then we ended up just coming back after 20 minutes, and they said, "Oh, okay, we can just seat you now." Um, the restaurant wasn't that busy, so we think it was probably a staffing issue. And then the food did take a while too. It was Mexican, so they had chips and stuff, so my kids were okay. And then I think the drinks came pretty quick there, but it did take a while for the food to come and then to get seated. But when we went to Belux Burger, that's kind of right there, almost inside of Tomfooleries, we got seated right away. I think it was a Saturday afternoon, and but the food, and we ordered some milkshakes, they took a while. So, you know, don't come starving and because your food may take a while, it may take a while to get seated. So that's one of my don'ts. So one of the do's is do take advantage of everything that's included with your room stay. So of course the indoor water park and the resort pool is included, in the outdoor water park if it's open seasonally. But the resort pool, the indoor water park, definitely do those things. Since we did splurge on the big 2 bedroom, 2 bath, I was like, okay, we're going to take advantage of these things before we spend money on, say, the arcade or just all the extras around the resort. So make sure you take full advantage of all that. Um, the flow rider, all those things that some places I think do charge extra for. Um, Pretty much everything in the indoor water park is included. Um, Also, like if you do want to take advantage of the room, like the refrigerator, the microwave, plan to, even if you eat at one of the restaurants there, take leftovers, eat that again sometime. Since you do have a microwave, you do have a refrigerator. We brought breakfast. If you have anything that needs to be microwaved, then you'll know you're covered. So along those same lines, the taking advantage of the resort itself, there can be a lot going on around the resort. Even just down, like when you first walk in, you're in the second level downstairs. There's a bar, bunch of seating, just kind of sitting there looking out the windows. There's a big fountain when you first walk in, and we were there in October, so there was a bunch of pumpkins and things, and just kind of walking around by all the restaurants. There's like this little Vespa, like outside the Italian restaurant, and there's just a bunch of little stools and things that are African themed. Um, so take advantage of that. At nighttime, there's a fire pit. I think there was 2 fire pits actually, and I believe you could bring your own s'more stuff, or I think they had s'mores things. I'm not sure if it was one of like it cost to buy the s'mores kit. Maybe they gave you the stick or the marshmallow. We didn't look into that, but that there is fire pits, and I think that's pretty much every night is the fire pits. So another thing to take advantage of is the towels that you can get in the water park. You just scan your wristband and you can take as many towels as you want and use them in the water park. But you do have to return the towels before you leave the indoor water park or outdoor water park because they will charge you for them. So you have to remember to return them. Whereas like at Great Wolf Lodge, you can bring them back to your room, return them later. So the thing to remember is maybe bring your own. A lot of people brought their own. The other thing with if you bring your own, then you know what they look like. So like if you put them down on a table or on a chair, then you can go back to it and you know exactly where you put your stuff. Whereas if you check out the towels, then they all look like everybody else's. But what we did the first day we brought our own, but then they get wet and they get really a lot to carry back. So then what we did was we we brought a couple, but then we also checked out a couple of towels, and then we brought cover-ups, of course, because it's cold when you're wet and you're walking back to your room. It can get very cold. So we brought a couple, and then we checked out, and then we could bring them back, the wet ones, before we walked back up to our room. So a couple more don'ts is don't forget to make bowling reservations, because once you're there, you know, they're going to be filled. Basically, if you're like, oh, let's go bowl, they're probably already going to be filled. So don't forget to make bowling reservations ahead of time. Probably depends on the season, a day or two ahead of time. Also, don't forget to look at what's going to be closed. So when we went, it was the first part of October, and I didn't look whenever the outdoor water park was closed, and it actually closed the end of September. So we just missed most of the outdoor water park. The resort pool was open. So don't forget to look at that. And sometimes I think maybe some outdoor play areas or something are closed too. So don't forget to check that schedule, especially if there's something that you were really wanting to do. Sometimes some of the indoor slides are closed too. So if you can check that out ahead of time to make sure like exactly what you want to do is open during the time that you're going, that's probably a good idea too. Also, do remember to check the water park hours. So for the best or the least crowds, I guess, of course, going early when they first open, or stay late, because that's, of course, in the middle is where you're going to have the most people. Also, do check or do utilize the text messaging service. So, like, when you get there, when you check in, they'll send you this text and you can ask them questions over that. I think we used it several times before we left. I couldn't remember when checkout time was. One time I was trying to use a press penny machine and it wasn't working, and I asked a staff member, but then it was taking a long time, and so then I asked over the text, and so they sent somebody out there. Yeah, so use that, especially if you're like, oh, wonder what this is, and you can't really figure it out on the website or whatever. Use that text messaging service because they're pretty quick on there. And do look out for seasonal offerings. Kind of mentioned this earlier, but a couple other seasonal offerings was there's a mascot like an elephant, I think a couple other animals that come out during the summertime, and then also they have like a farmer's market type thing, I think, on some Saturdays, and that is, I believe, seasonal, and then also per days of the week. I believe it's only on Saturdays, but look out for the seasonal things and then take advantage of them for sure if you're there during that season. Or look out and make sure that the seasonal offering that you want isn't closed when you're there. So that's it for these do's and don'ts of Kalahari Indoor Water Park. And remember, tomorrow is just a dream away.